Okay, today's Friday. Uh, another week, another trading week has passed, and the past 3 weeks has been a truly a educational 3 weeks. When you lose, it becomes an incredibly educational period. When you win, it becomes less because it is essentially uh, saying whatever I am able to do now is effective. And so all I have to do is to use it again the following week. When something doesn't work, it means that it's going to be a very educational a period in my trading life. So so I just realized something, right? I just realized something about the trading room. Okay, it's about the trading room. Uh, and it's very similar to what chess is. Okay, so chess has 16 pieces on each side, right? 16 pieces, 32 pieces with 8 by 8, 64 squares. Okay. Uh, now, uh, is that right? Okay. So what's that? You got 4 4. You got yeah. So 64 pieces. There's gonna be four. Okay, there's gonna be four spaces between the pawns from each side. Okay, somewhere around there. And um, the basic rule is understanding up to the point where en passant is, right? The way that the pawns move when it takes it. Okay, that's the rule. And the way that the pawns move is that it can move only one spaces forward. It cannot go backwards. But all the other pieces can move forwards and backwards. The rook can move forwards and sideways, whereas the bishops can move diagonally. Now, the horse can occupy every square, but it moves in a very interesting manner. It has it performs a forking move, essentially moving one step up and one step left or right. Okay, and the queen can move anywhere unless it is being obstructed by my own piece or the opponent's piece. And the king can only move one space at a time. Okay, so those are the basic architecture of chess. Okay, and the difference between a person who is 40 years into playing chess and who is still at uh, uh, ELO 1000 versus somebody who's at ELO 3000 is the sophistication of the strategy that is being employed. Okay, that is the distinction between a master, a grandmaster, and somebody like myself who's been using the same moves, being able to see only one or two moves without any sophistication of uh, the the historical grandmaster line of attacks, defenses, and strategic maneuvering. Okay, um, so there's a bunch of certain moves that prevails itself after 26 moves when a certain sequence of moves are moved into a specific line, and the variability is very tight. Okay, and so it can change from one line to another line, but the main focus is to attract a certain sequence of events that causes the opponent to be drawn into a certain line. Okay, that is a strategic maneuvering that that the difference between a grandmaster and somebody like myself, right? Now, the difference between a grandmaster and a novice is being able to recognize what's in the room, the chess room. Okay, in any environment, in order for someone to become a master of a particular area of expertise, is to become aware of things that are inside that discipline, the room. Okay, so in order for somebody to become familiar with the room, the person has to explore the room to specifically identify and characterize and learn about that particular thing in depth to the point where it is not a flashing thought. It is not a glance looking in that direction to get a 2D view of it, but getting a 3D and a fourth dimension of understanding each of the things that are in the room. And what happens in trading is what I've, from my experience, and probably it's the same with vast majority of people who are not profitable at this point, is not being able to fully explore the room. The reason why they don't fully explore the room is because they're only traveling, they're only looking based on the way that they have been veiled within, caged in within a very narrow focus, primarily due to a couple things. One of them, the biggest one, is emotion. Emotion causes vast majority of individuals to concentrate on that never-ending nectar of self-satisfaction that causes them to keep focused on that infinitely infinitely time-consuming thing, which is called the addiction to that emotion that comes from trading with addiction. Okay, and that's why people are corralled into only seeing, even though the person is standing within certain uh, hints. Go on YouTube. Hundreds and thousands of people are talking about certain things, but they never pay attention to that because they're so preoccupied and focused. It's like it's like a drug addict. Okay, the drug addict is looking for the next fix, and they can't see anything. They can't see anything else because they cannot be distracted. Their mind is preoccupied on that single thing. Okay, because that is their next fix, and that's what their body and their the mind is craving. That will preoccupy a person for the rest of their lives, and that holds a person from being a grandmaster and a novice chess player. That's how it works. Now, what I've experienced in trading is very, very the same thing, because on my cell phone I have this chess game, and I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, okay, so I'm at a legends level, where I have uh, where I have passed 5 or 6 different levels of competency in order to join in that group of elite chess players. But still, I find myself doing the same thing over and over again without a greater level of sophistications to move me into a higher level of understanding. So then I walked over to the Regis cafeteria, that kitchen over there, so I could grab some caffeine to hold me over as I start to fully populate this thing called the process. Okay, this weekend is a process. The cost of 3 weeks. 3 weeks at age 56 is very, very expensive. The cost of 3 weeks as a 20-year-old is less expensive. Okay. As a 56-year-old, even if I live long as 80 years old, it's only some 20 years. 20 years. 3 weeks is a very, very expensive cost to incur. So as I walked over to the kitchen, I thought to myself, the trading has a room. There is a room in trading. What I neglected to view for the past 5 years is all the things that are there. Okay? There's a lot of things there, but I never looked. I never, because what I was looking for was, how do I make that money? Okay? It was purely focused on that. And when I focused on how do I make that money, I completely bypassed the strategies and the processes and all these intricacies that are required to build upon in order to get myself to the level where the money will start to flow. Okay? It'll automatically flow. It happens once I achieve a certain, it's like getting a college degree. Once I get a college degree, I'm now prepared as I spent the past 4 to 5 years building my credentials, and I have built a uh, and proven that I am capable of performing the duties, and therefore, somebody who hasn't cannot be doing the same thing right out of graduation, right? So then I thought to myself as I was waiting for some caffeine to fill up this cup, and I'm thinking to myself, there is a room just like this kitchen, okay? There's this refrigerator, there's a microwave, there's a coffee machine, there's a sink, there's a closet, there's also the IT closet there, right? And there's a couple of tables there, okay? So if I were to expand and if I don't look at it, really look at it, it's just it is just a picture in a poster. If I don't touch it, I don't smell it, I don't walk across it, I don't bump into it, I'm not as experienced about that particular room as I need to be. Okay? Then I finally realized that the trading has a room as well, right? It has a room. The reason I know there is a room is there's a room called the process. There's a room labeled process, okay? Um, in Shining, the movie Shining, okay? So if you've ever seen the movie Shining by Stephen King, and the movie rendition is very very striking. If you see it for the first time, it's very very striking. There is also a room. Oh, hello. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there is actually a room. Okay. Boy, that was scary. So there's actually a room, but it's called an elevator. Okay, the elevator scene is quite sophisticated. Okay, if you see it for the first time, it's very very sophisticated. So the story is that it is in it is in a setting. Okay, it's in the mountains where it's a mountain retreat, and they close that retreat during the wintertime, uh, and this family goes there to uh, 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 house sit that area during the wintertime to keep it upkeep. And apparently, there is a history of haunting that occurs in that area. And so, what is memorable about it is that in that room, which now gives me goosebumps, is the elevator opens up and a flood rushes out. Okay, that's aside from these twin girls that are like spooky, right? So that's in the room. So then I decided to explore. I decided to explore what trading room is really about, and there is a room called there is a room called um, process. Okay, it's a room called process. Okay, you cannot be consistent without exploring the room called process. Okay, you cannot, you cannot, you cannot. Uh, you have to enter into the room called process and fully explore it and become intimately familiar with it in order to become a master trader. If you look at the room and outside and you keep knocking on it, you don't go inside it, you'll never, ever be profitable as a trader. Because you have to fully understand the process in order to enter into consistency. Process is a bridge to consistency. Okay, the process is a bridge to consistency. You know, there's a movie called The Bridge to whatever that is. There's an old World War II movie, Bridge to something, right? And let me see if I can figure that out, right? Um, it's called Bridge to War movie. It's a war movie. Oh, yeah. No, it's not Bridge Too Far. Anyway, that's one of the movies. But anyway, so there's a lot of, in fact, there's a lot of bridges in movies. Anyway, so essentially, process is so important because process defines consistency. It's a recipe. It's a recipe for consistency. The process defines the intricacies of each of the steps that are required in order to be consistent. The process brings into light concretely for me, the observer and the user and applier and the occupation, okay? Occupation as a trader to use in order to be consistent. Without it, I cannot be consistent ever. It's like closing my eyes and running around. And each moment it's a different setting, okay? But a process opens my eyes, captures what's there to make consistent what is there. When I open my eyes into the trading world, it is the trading room. Everything is consistent, though dynamic, it is clearly defined. It is defined because it behaves in a consistent manner. And that room has specifics. For instance, consistency requires many different things. One in particular is the self in that room. When I am entering into that room, then that the room called process, okay, the room called process brings into light my contribution into the trading world, and I become part of that process. For instance, if I have enough food to eat, not overeat, then I'm prepared. If I have enough rest, then I am clear-minded and able to perform the duties. If I have enough exercise, then I'm prepared in order to take on the task of performing the trade. The other part is there's a duality in there's quite a few things that are involved, but one of them is part of the duality is what I bring to the market as part of the process and what the market is and how it reveals itself to me and the strategies that I'm employing, the grandmaster strategy that I'm employing in order to take advantage of what I'm seeing in the market, right? So the process then is understanding that there are mechanics in making the trades. The first part is I have to buy and I have to sell on a very simplistic manner of understanding what trading is. I buy and sell. That's it, right? But it has to be elaborated on based on the conditions that are there. I can just do that, but what happens is when I do that, essentially the statistical probability of edging myself into a positive territory is nil because I'm buying and selling without regard for the edge, defining the edge. Okay, the process, the ultimate goal is to define the edge in my trading. Okay, that's the goal. That's the goal of what the process is to clearly substantiate my edge. Okay, that's the process. That's the process. Any process is there, but a working process is something that defines my edge. Okay, the edge on a personal level, as I've described, is having enough rest, nutrition, and exercise, and and on my side. The second part is knowing, for instance, uh, buying and selling is great, but buying requires an entry point, and the entry point is steering towards uh, the statistical positivity. Okay, the entry point has a certain level of uh, addition to making my trades a positive thing. Okay, because it depends on certain situations. When I look at certain situations, there are critical elements within the price action that allows me to say that when I enter into this trade, there is a statistical probability based on the historical data, okay, that says that when I enter based on certain characteristics defined by confluences, okay? Defined by confluences that says at that price, after I see certain things, if I see one, two, three, or four things, okay, for instance, let's say the price has bumped into a price level that is deemed uh, and, and created a credible point where there is support. Okay, it's called a support. Support meaning that the price is being supported at that level, and there is a higher probability that the price is going to move up instead of going down. That's what support is. Okay, so that's the first level understanding of what critical components of what entry really means. Okay, now the second part is how is it behaving around that area? Is it showing that it is consistently relying on and wanting to remain in that area based on the price action? Okay. Or is it displaying certain characteristics that says, hey, it is it is about to break out? Okay, that's when the trading needs to occur, because if it's great that I've already defined what support is, okay? The support is there, okay? I've defined it and it's behaving it. Many of the candles are behaving as though that there is support, okay? And so it is defining on a constant basis that it is support. But in order to make money, it has to move from point A to point B, whereupon the the condition that requires is action. It has to have an action, okay? The condition has been met, okay? One of the conditions has been met. What is the action that's going to take place? There are several criteria that defines what the condition is, which is called the confluence. The confluence defines and supports the idea of support. There are various things that says, I see this, I see this, I see that it previously, like 1 hour ago, it touched on that price, bumped up, and then came back, and then bumped back up again within the matter 2 to 3 times, which clearly substantiates that it is support. Okay, there are other ways, other things that can shore up the and add, create an additive factor into saying that that is a supporting idea of that support. Once that has been supported, okay, uh, once that has been defined, once once that idea has been supported, then there has to be an action. Okay, so essentially, a vector has two things. Okay, vector has magnitude and direction. Okay, a vector in engineering terminology has direction and magnitude. Okay, that's the definition of magnitude. Okay, so essentially, what the action will do is it'll clearly define what the direction is. Okay, and the magnitude component will then be looking at the support and resistance from looking at the resistance from where the support is. Now that's going to clearly define the the magnitude. Okay, So the uh, action essentially is the idea that there is a support and that there's a breakout. That's the action. The magnitude component of trading essentially is what is the distance between support and resistance. Really, right? What is the what? So if you have a tetherball, when I was young, I remember playing tetherball essentially, right? So the tetherball, you just slap it around, and what it will do is it'll spin around, okay? And then however I angle it, then it's going to either miss the person on the other side and wrap around it. And the idea is to wrap it around until the ball touches the pole. Okay, that's the idea. Okay. So if I were to relate to it, what that means from the base where I slap the ball to the point where it has at the highest point, there is a there is a known condition that occurs. Okay, there is a known condition that occurs, but there could be some wind effects that could cause the movement of the ball, tethered ball, to move in a certain direction, limiting its maximum travel from where I start to the point where it eventually ends up. Okay, that's training. This has to be clearly defined. This has to be clearly spoken to on YouTube. This has to be clearly substantiated in order for me to progress. Okay, so I need to continue now. So that means uh, the distance between the support and resistance is the magnitude at which point the price will move. Okay, but anything can happen because the 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 definition that I have is a statistical probability. The support is a statistical probability, the resistance is a statistical probability, and the magnitude at which point it moves is also a statistical probability because certain things could happen, certain events could happen. The macroeconomic news could cause the magnitude to change. It can change based on the conditions that arises because anything that happens from point A, which is now, to into the future, certain things could impact it. Okay, the past information, for instance, let's say there's a huge buyer. Okay, let's say there's a huge buyer, and the market conditions have changed such that certain countries have a favorable tendency for uh, um, vacationers to go there at a certain period of time. So, and then I'm looking at the price at that specific time where the currency exchange is occurring between the US dollar and Japanese yen. And so if there's a flood of individuals who are going from US to Japan to spend their vacation money, that means that the money is being drained from the US dollar and strengthening the demand for the Japanese yen, which means although it's not uh, a policy change or global economic news that are defining the movement of the currency pair, there is a slight change in the valuation between the U.S. dollar and the Japanese yen, which means the Japanese yen is getting stronger because there is a higher demand of the Japanese yen, and then less demand for the US dollar because the money is being exchanged. Okay, so that means that there is that influence of movement from point A to point B, which essentially is the support to resistance. At a point where there is a period of demand that occurs during a month-long period where travelers go there to in order to support the idea of strengthening the USD JPY. Okay, uh, so that means that if there's a pair, that means that the USD JPY will go down lower because the demand for the yen is higher than the demand for the US dollar. Uh, but if I'm looking at it on the flip side, where the Japanese vacationers are in the U.S., then it would be reversed, where the US, UJ will be going up now. So that means that that specific portion of it creates a demand for a prolonged period of time. That is called support. Okay? That is called support. Support and resistance. And the other thing is there's a sustained selling period at a certain level where a price has a fixed state with a fixed amount of liquidity that occurs. It's called liquidity. That's the point where it sells. That's where the point where there is resistance. Okay? The price will tend to stay below it because anything above it will cause a sell-off because there are people who are selling at that point. Okay? So, so the magnitude comes from the support to resistance. Okay? So where am I going with this? Okay. So it all goes back to exploring all these things. It's part of the process. I'm in the room. I'm exploring it, and I just spent 20 to 30 minutes, to maybe 20 minutes, talking about the entry point. The entry point is just one item. Although trading is so simple, it's buying and selling. But in order to steer the statistical probability in my direction, such that when I make a trade, then my trade become more effective and more positive, then have a I have to have a better understanding of what's in the room where process is defined. Okay, so so I've already alluded. I was looking for this. I was looking for. I thought of this concept many years ago, and I did not have the experience and the knowledge to fully grasp onto because I was trying to name this bridge. Okay, because the idea for anyone who's a trader is to become consistent. But in order to be consistent, I have to cross that bridge. I have to cross that. I have to I have to be in that room to understand what the process is, which allows me to be consistent. Okay, there's multiple bridges that are required. Okay, it's a connecting bridge. It is a connecting bridge that that's required in order to cross to the other side, and the other side is called consistency. Anybody who's starting out is inconsistent. Okay, consistency means there's a certain period of time with certain amount of trades that defines what consistency is. Even if I know everything, if I don't make a single trade, then there's no consistency because there's no data. It's a divide by zero. Okay. So that means so that means that that's a single item into in trading. So if I were to go slightly deeper into what the process is the reason I'm verbalizing this is because I have to do this like with a snap of a finger when I'm trading. Okay, I have to be intimately familiar with it. I have to be intimately familiar with what's in that room called uh, the process. I have to be because I essentially have to like take that clunky process that I'm building up right now into a finally mastered process that I can use in trading because I'll see it and I have to apply what that is and take that trade. Okay, and sometimes the trade is only a few seconds, and yet my brain is expected to make the right trade, which is very hard. It's harder if I don't have the process uh, uh, fully vetted out. Okay, that's my intention right now. Okay, so that's why it's 5 o'clock, 5:20 on Friday, and I'm still and it took me 5 years to get to this point, and I'm very very excited to document this journey. Okay, this journey. So it's gonna take. I have a feeling this is gonna take about 2 hours to really talk about it. Okay, because I've so far just talked about the entry point, and I'm not even done with the entry point yet. Okay, so essentially, if I were to look at now, so the first level is buy and sell, okay? But there's sophistication, layer by layer by layer by layer, like an onion, okay? Like an onion, the peels in the onion, right? Onion has many different layers. So the first part, the crusty layers, is buy and sell. But as I go deeper and deeper into the core of it, there's many different layers, okay? If you slice up a layer, there's a lot of rings going through the rings, okay? So now when I look at the entry point, uh, now when I so what I'm doing right now is exploring the room, and what I'm hoping to do is uh, explore it to the detail, or I can pinpoint exactly what's missing in my trading, right? What's missing in my trading, so that I can fill in what's missing and make it work, right? Now, the entry point. Now the entry point is now the entry point. Uh, Now the entry point is a very critical component. The exit point is also a very critical component. So there are at least three things that I need to be considered. Now, one of them is risk size. Now, the risk size is important because I don't want to waste a good setup with a size that is not fully representative of the quality of the trade that I'm taking. So the risk size is important too. Now, the risk size is going to the risk size uh, is very important. Okay, it's very important. The risk size is very important because it can mean it can mean several different things. Okay, um, if I get too big, before I can react, my account could be severely compromised. That's how important it is. The risk size. Now, I've already alluded to the fact that the entry point is important. The exit is also important, and the stop loss is it's very important. It's extremely important. I was trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out now. Here's I've done a few things, and the lazy thinking, lazy way of doing something is essentially saying, okay, so I get into a trade and I have a small size and it moves against me. Okay, sure, it moves against me, uh, and it could move against me a lot. But because the size is small, it can move a lot, and I can still survive that trade. Okay, and so, but the thing is, if I have a size risk that is too big, then that will cause me to uh, exit the trade on the downside, and that's usually what happens when I have size that's too big. Okay. So there are, so there are on the second level from buying and selling. There's called buy. There's a buy. There's a sell, and there's an exit. Okay. There's a buy, sell, and an exit. Those are the three things that are incredibly important. Entry point in itself is important because it recognizes what I need to do. Okay. Am I looking for? Obviously, everything is a breakout. People enter into trade expecting a breakout or is in a breakout. Two things that will occur. Nobody wants to be in a trade where it's just moving sideways. People are looking for a breakout. A breakout defines the entry point. Everybody is looking for a breakout. Okay? So the breakout occurs at certain events, certain things before, and certain information defines a breakout, and that statistical probability defines the efficacy of that definition for the breakout. Okay, and that's how the breakout can be taken advantage of, and that's so. So if I were to apply this knowledge into what I can expect is um, now every trade is based on a breakout. A breakout has to occur. Okay. Under that premise, that I'm looking for an entry point where the early onset with a uh, probability, statistical probability that supports the entry needs to occur. I cannot enter too early because it it is possible that maybe it's not a support. Okay, maybe it's not the support, and it may be just a pause before it goes down, and I may have entered, and then obviously I'm going to be paying the price of being wrong. Okay, which is going to be the stop loss. So that's the difficulty of the entry. Entry is complicated. It really is complicated because I want to steer it in my direction that allows me to have a statistical probability that is uh, that is advantageous to me. Okay, so now the exit point is exit point. I'm gonna look into that as well. Is um, and also the exit has always been a problem. It's been like 5 years, and so there's a buy, sell, and exit. Buy, sell, and exit. I'll define exit as a premature exit from the trade, and sell is essentially saying that okay, it has met the conditions that I've set for the trade, because the trade was turned out to be the right trade. But if it exits, it means that the trade did not fully form into a trade that I expected, either through a loss or maybe the trade was less than what I expected. Okay, so that's the exit. So those three things need to be defined uh, uh, in order to clearly substantiate the process. The process. Okay, so the process is essentially to give a snapshot of what that is saying, okay, if I see this, I'm going to do this. If I see this, I'm going to do this. In simplistic terminology, a process is if I see this, I will do this. If I see that, I will do that. Okay, that's the simplistic understanding of what a process is. A process. Process has at least two things. Uh, uh, a a setup and action. Okay, so essentially in trading, process is defined by two things. Okay, a setup and action. Setup and action. When a particular thing occurs, I would do this. If the price moves below support, then it's a sell. So I sell. Okay, that's the action. Okay, that's the process. However, there's a sequence. You know those like little rotary dial locks. You have to put in three numbers. You have to turn right. You have to turn left. You have to turn right. Okay, and all those three numbers are different, but they have to be done in the right sequence. If you don't do that in the right sequence, uh, the lock will not unlock. Okay, it has a process. Okay, unlocking a dial lock has a process. Okay, from beginning to the end. Okay, turn right, turn left, turn right on a specific number. For instance, example, turn right 37, turn left 10, turn right 5. That is the process, and that will unlock it consistently. That will consistently unlock the lock. Okay, that's a process. Now because the trading is a lot more complicated. Okay, trading is a lot more complicated because of the human element. It creates a greater level of it. It causes me to not think about something like that. Okay, because my mind is being taken away into exploring the emotion of trading instead of focusing on objectively looking at the trades. Okay, so now I've already alluded to the fact. Now I'm exploring, but this is I'm exploring the process of entering, uh, selling and exiting. Okay, these are the three things that I'm exploring, and when I have mastered it, I had this conversation with this guy a long time ago about about how many years ago was that? Like 20. It was like 2006, so 2005, I think. So that's about 20 years ago. And this guy was a subject matter expert. Okay, he was a master of the USB 2.0, and he started talking right in front of me. And he was using languages that were completely foreign to me. The way that the words the words I recognized, but the way that those words were connected together was totally foreign to me. Okay, it's like these common words that are there, but they're scrambled in a manner and on a sequence of bases. That's why you have your DNAs that are the sequencing is so complex. Even though the basic letters are finite, there's a enormous amount of combination of how the DNA is strung together to define me. Okay, even though what is that like? There are like three or four different types of the bonding that occurs that used to have a chain of things that occurs that uniquely defines who I am as the DNA. Okay, so 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 in order for me to be I have to be intimately familiar to the point where I am a master of a trader. I am a master day trader. In order for me to be a master day trader, I have to have the ability to have a crystal clear mind that is able to take a trade from beginning to the end with enough variance to cover uh, a sufficient amount of return. Okay, a sufficient amount of return on a consistent basis, and be able to verbalize it from beginning to the end. That is the objective of this conversation that I'm having with myself on this YouTube, which currently now is at 47 minutes. I suspect that it's going to take another hour or 2 hours, okay? Because I'm exploring the room, which essentially is the same as the bridge that goes from me not being consistent to being consistent. It's for me to be aware of something called, I may run out of storage here on the cell phone. It may automatically shut down after maybe 2 hours because the storage will be depleted. So, probably like 20 gig or something. And yeah, and the storage is what, 100 gig, I think. So, so I should be okay for about 2 hours. All right. So now I've already alluded to the fact that it is a see. I made a point like see. There's a trading buddy of mine who belongs to a group called X Trades, and there are a lot of people they collaborate, and obviously the speed of them becoming familiar with trading is far better than I. I'm just working by myself here, isolated. Okay, the only thing that I do is go wash dishes or do some prep work at a restaurant, and then I come over here and attempt to make this thing work. Okay, I'm trying to make this thing work. I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm trying to make this work. So now I have a serious disadvantage, okay, in trying to make this thing work. Okay, I'm doing this by myself. So now I've clearly substantiated the importance of the process. So now each of those subjects are very complicated. What I because I can't right now verbalize it like it can't. It's not flowing out as smoothly as I want it to. Okay, um, because there are three things that needs to occur. Okay, buy, sell, or exit. Buy, sell, or exit. Exit is a premature uh, uh, a selling of the trade. Okay, either by not getting to the point or it's reversing at a point, or it's actually in the red. It has turned against my thesis, and it's in a loss. Okay. The uh, the second part is selling, which means that it has met the requirements of my thesis, and it's going to sell because it has reached most likely at a point where it is near where resistance is, or I declared it as resistance and I'm satisfied with the result, which in certain cases, what it means is that it probably reached it and it'll probably go beyond it. Okay. But that's the second criteria. Now, the third criteria is the entry point. Okay. The entry point is will allow me to, uh, uh, because it has several things that are involved in the entry point. Okay. So it defines when I enter, I know which security it's going to be. I know where the stop loss should be. I know where the resistance is going to be. Okay, and I know the 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 risk ratio of the trade. Okay, because the risk ratio of gold is different than EU or UJ or the Nasdaq. Okay, so one millishare is different. One microshare is different. The potency of one microshare is different from each of those. Okay, they are each of them are different. Okay, so I have to have that in mind when I make the trade. Okay, so now what seems to be important is that what I need to do now is to clearly define my entry point. I've already talked about the breakout. Okay, the breakout. Now, breakout is something that is used to make the trade. Everybody, without exception, uses the breakout. Okay, without exception, it has to be a breakout. Unless you are a options trader where you're looking for a choke point where the price doesn't move. Okay, but everybody else is looking for a breakout because the breakout defines uh, from point A to point B. Only a breakout will occur. Even when it's in a trading range, breakout occurs from one side to the other side. That's why it's called a breakout. It moves from point A to point B, right? So now, um, what I've noticed, what I have noticed is that if I consider something as being a range-bound situation, okay, now I'm entering into the specifics of the entry point. When I look at, there's two ways of looking at it. Okay, one of them is trading around a substantiated support and resistance, which is essentially a range bound. It is easier to see the support and resistance of a range bound setup. Okay, support and resistance of the range bound setup is easy to see because it is in itself the definition of support and resistance. And so when I look at that, then what I'm looking for is certain characteristics at the support area where the price is showing that it's going to break out of that support and move towards the resistance. And what assurance do I have that it's going to go from point A to point B, from support to resistance? Because uh, I have to have certain characteristics. Now what I have to do is, from my experience, from what I've studied, then it has to show me that certain things have occurred. Okay, so what are things that I am looking for when I'm looking for the entry point to define a onset of a breakout? Because I as since I've been trading for 5 years, I've made thousands and thousands of trades, and thousands of trades were wrong, obviously. So because I was even though the market was telling me what it's doing, I was uh, unable to recognize. So there's a couple things the market is displaying something, and based on how I read it, I can project. I can project with a statistical probability that it's going to behave in that manner. If I don't know how to read it, then I'm going to get confused. Okay? Because what will happen is that if it's in a range bound situation and I'm entering it, I could be either too early or too late. Okay? Or it could just be sitting there. So there's three things that could occur. Okay? Once I enter into a trade. Once I enter into a trade, I could be early, which means that I could see a severe drawdown. Okay? If I'm early, that's what it means. If I'm early, it means that I will be experiencing a drawdown. But if it's moving sideways, then I'm going to be sitting in that trade for a long period of time because it's not moving, it's not breaking out. So then what I have to do is recognize what is important. Now this is getting somewhere. So I have to define all the criteria for a breakout. What is a breakout? Okay? What is a breakout? Once I define what a breakout is, then I can recognize it. Then I can take advantage of it. And I can tell the difference between a non-breakout to a breakout. Okay? So when it's a break-in, that means I'm going to be suffering a drawdown. So I need to avoid that. So now I need to clearly substantiate. So I made so many trades. So what is telling me that there is a, so now I have to construct it. I have to see, I haven't really thought about this when I was making these trades. That's how foolish I was. because because in my mind I had this hazy idea of what that's what it is. And what I would end up doing is that because I haven't clearly substantiated the specifics, the finite details of the entry point, I would I would in many of the instances be wrong. Yeah, which has been true for the past 5 years. Now creating this process is going to allow me to be more effective in the trades that I'm making, right? Right. So here's where here's what everybody's looking for. This is what everybody wants. This is the this is very, very important. Everybody is like everybody is looking for this thing, which is what are the characteristics of a breakout? Okay? What are the highly effective characteristics of a breakout? That's what everybody's looking for that. Every trader is looking for that except for options traders. Okay? Because they don't want the price to move so that their options price will decay to zero. If the price doesn't move, it works for them. But vast majority of people who are in the money in the market needs the price to move, okay, to make money. If it just stays the same way, nobody makes any money except for the options trader. So now, now this is something that I really haven't really looked into, and because I thought I knew it. I was I was I was deceiving myself. I was lying to myself. Okay, I was lying to myself, and I didn't even know about it. Okay, even though the data was saying, look, you don't know where your entry point is. You haven't clearly defined your entry point. That's why you're doing this. Okay, that is why you're consistently losing. You've defined it. You haven't really looked inside the room to fully explore what's inside a room called process, which is also the name of the bridge that goes from inconsistency to consistency. Okay, this is very, very, very important. Okay, the other part of it is important part of it is managing my trade is also important too, so that I don't get shaken out of a winning trade, where I could actually this is actually even though this subject matter is a singular in its description, is it is de facto the most important part about trading. Okay, everybody trades the breakout. If I can find a highly a statistical probability that tells me that the breakout occurs 90% of the time. When I see this, I'm in the money. I'm rolling in the money. It's ATM machine. It's it. That's it. I found it. It's the money tree. That's that's why it's so difficult. Okay, that's why I'll either sell or exit. Okay, because the variance in efficacy of reading, when a person is emotionally compromised, it's like seeing the world. It's like seeing the room with a welder's helmet. Okay, that's what it looks like. It's limited. It's disguised, and things that looks one way, in reality is something else. That's why it's so difficult. Okay, uh, just by itself, to recognizing it is difficult by itself, but recognizing it. So the components of a breakout is so critical. Now that I see it, now that I'm thinking about it and talking about it and exploring it, I realized how, see, when I'm in the room called the process, everything looks the same size. Everything looks like it's the same size until I start to explore, and then I start to understand it, and I realize how big that subject matter is. That's the exploration of the room, where until it was invisible. Okay, it's like a speck of dust on the floor, and then I look at it, and then it starts to grow in significance of what it is as a part of the process. Okay, right? So essentially, as a day trader and not an options trader, the word that is so important is called the breakout. The breakout is, everybody's looking for that. Everybody's looking for a statistical, reliable means for them to predict what a breakout is. Singularly, most important thing, a breakout. Now, Now, breakout occurs in many forms. And one of the things that I've seen based on the volatility of the market for the past 3 weeks is that uh, what it would do is it'll have a V. It's going to have a V, and it's fast. And if I miss it, I'm going to miss that point. And if I timed it right, I could be at a point where I'm trying to sell when I should be buying. And as a novice trader, normally 99% of the time, I'm the one who's selling at a point where I should be buying. Okay, that's how it ends up. That's how the trade ends up, because I'm locked in. Okay, and I couldn't get out until a point where it's stabilized and the max pain is there. That's how things have been, right? What I Because there is a mixture of the highly volatile conditions with a period in time where the volatility is less, which means that when I use a stop loss, it usually is the point where it's about to reverse, and so I end up saying, okay, well, I used the stop loss, but the trade turned out to be the right thing. It just took my trade and just started going up in my direction anyway. So that mixture of the long volatile market that a market mixes in causes the causes the confusion in traders, and that's why loss occurs. So the breakout is very important, and predicting the breakout the is a very important job as a day trader, right? So now I've scratched the surface of this. I have attempted to explore it as much as possible, but my experience and knowledge did not allow me to explore it. Let's see how far I can get into it this period. The unraveling of this verbally uh, will allow me to uh, think about it in more detail to see how see. Okay, so how do I explore this? Now the breakout occurs. Now there's two ways of the breakout. The breakout is a continuation of a breakout. That's a breakout. Okay, a breakout as it occurs can have a breakout upon a breakout. Okay, that's called a continuation. Okay, generally speaking, what I and it happens all the time, right? That kind of thing happens all the time. So there's three things that are occurring. It's range bound, it's in a breakout, or it's in a breakout of a breakout. Okay, so it's a breakout, or it's range bound. Okay, range bound, or breakout, or continuation. So those are the three types of trades that I'd be looking for. Okay, so again, now that I've looked at it, so there was 2, 3, 3. So buy and sell, um, so entry, exit, and sell. Now there's three components of the entry. Okay, where upon the subject matter of the entry is based on the breakout, and the breakout has three types. Okay, one of them is going to be range bound. Okay, based on trading from toggling between support and resistance. The second part is breaking out of that resistance. Okay, breaking out. Okay, breakout of the resistance, and that breakout is in itself is a trade. Okay, it will develop into a continuation as it moves towards the resistance. Okay, as it breaks out into resistance. So there's three distinct types of trading that I can take, and it happens all the time. It happens every time because it'll be in that state. It's going to be either in a range bound situation, or it's about to break out, or is in a breakout. It is about to break out, or is in the action of in a breakout. Okay, so those are the three things that are there. All right. So how do I how do I explore this a little more? Okay, I have to take it one part of it at a time. Again, now I'm exploring it one item by item in order to familiarize myself. Okay, so the first part is okay. So I've now there's going to be a commonality. There's going to be a commonality in all three of those things, whether it's going to be range bound, whether it's going to be a breakout, and whether it's going to be a continuation. The continuation is going to be the continuation in itself is a specifically clearly defined means, because it could be a wide. It's when it's a breakout, and it's in a breakout. It's in a trend. Okay, it's in a trend, and the trend has various ways to trend. It could be parabolic, it could be narrow, or it could be wide. Okay, when it's wide, it's going to pull back and then move back up. Okay, and that occurs quite a bit. And sometimes what it will do is it won't be um, linear like that. It won't be linear like that. It can be non-linear in its movement. It could pull back for a little bit and then swing up and things like that, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be um, uh, the traditional characteristics of a parabolic move, or narrow or wide. Okay, so it could have factors like break and retest kind of thing that occurs, right? And so I have to be familiar with that. Okay, so this is very very important. This is something that I attempted to address many years in the past, but I did not have the skill sets to fully vet it out, and I'm trying to. I want to make sure that I vet it out, because the past 3 weeks has shown me that I need to explore this. Okay, let's discuss a little more detail about what a breakout is. Okay, what is a breakout? Now the breakout essentially. Okay, so what is the effect of a breakout? What is the effect of a breakout? What is the signature of a breakout? What is the outcome of the breakout? A breakout, the outcome is that the price has moved from point A to point B. Okay, but but it moves in a manner that is different each time. It's unique, but it's similar. It's similar, but it's unique. But the end product of the breakout is the same. It goes from point A to point B. That's the breakout. It does that. What are the signature characteristics of a breakout that distinguishes it between remaining in that area, or reversing, or it is in alignment with a breakout? So that's the critical thing. So what are the instruments that I can use to clearly substantiate a breakout? What are the things that I can use? What allows me to, so based on my experience so far, what allows me to say that a breakout occurs? Okay, what is a breakout that occurs? Okay, so it has to have a structure. It has to have a structure. Once that structure has been defined, and then once that structure is defined, and then a specific thing occurs after the definition of the structure, then only then a breakout is confirmed. Oh, so what I have to do is I have to confirm. I have to recognize and confirm. I have to recognize that there is an imminent breakout, and then there has to be a recognition that breakout has occurred. Okay. Um, See, do I want to enter into trade on the hopes that it is a breakout, or do I want? Am I still? Am I late? Am I late when a breakout occurs, or am I? So essentially, the percentage of my efficacy will be higher if I waited until I confirmed that the breakout has occurred, because in many of the instances, it is possible. It is possible that I'm wrong. Okay, so in order for me to make my trading more effective, in order for me to make it more effective, I need to wait until I confirm. Okay, I need to wait until I confirm that the breakout has occurred. And what are the signature? It is a price. It is essentially a hold of a price. What is the signature that what is the it's not definitive because it could move up and then move down. It happens. Okay? Such as what it will do is when something moves down, it bumps up and then it comes back down. So the price in itself is not an indication that a breakout has occurred. When it drops, it goes up and then comes back and then it could just keep dropping. Okay? Just like that. So I need to recognize a certain behavior that allows me to make a statistical high probability that a breakout has already occurred. When the breakout has already occurred, then I can take the trade. Okay? This is a long ordeal, but I'm stepping through it. Okay? So that means that it's not a necessity. It's not the only criteria that the price has to be above a certain support price to consider it as a breakout, because it could be a false breakout. It could be a false breakout or a legitimate breakout. Okay. Uh, for instance, when the price dropped, hit the support, bounced up, looked like it was a breakout, but it came back down. So that was a false breakout. Okay, that's a false breakout. So that means that when I enter that trade, I'll lose money. That's what it means. It means that I'll be high ticking it, and that's so. There's something else that's going on. Okay, there's something else going on. The difference between a sharp V shape versus something that's down like this and then up and down. Those are the differences. Okay, and sometimes what it will do is it'll do this and then just sit there for a while. Okay, so these are the things that I need to distinguish. Sure, the price moved up a little bit, but what is that price doing? Is it going to be breaking out or not breaking out, or is it going to go the other direction? That's something that I need to be more aware of. That's something that's missing, and that's something that I need to study up on. Okay. So I'm gonna make a note here, and I want to make a video on that. The next one. Okay, I want to record it. I want to record that part of it, so I already see what's lacking. Okay, so need to define a breakout. Okay. Okay, right now I'm gonna stop it there, and I'm going to explore. I'm going to now explore the breakout in this continuation. Okay.